Hollywood Physiques, are they healthy to aspire to? And maybe even more importantly, are they attainable? Can you look like that on the regular? First off, what do you think of when you think of Hollywood Physiques? I want to hear from you kind of what you think. First thing I think about is like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. Damn, girl, you could shred carrots on those abs. I also think like Schwarzenegger in Terminator and Sylvester Stallone in Rocky, just looking big and all buff and stuff like that. Lately, Chris Hemsworth as Thor is really impressive. And Alan Ritchson as Reacher, that dude's huge. Obviously, I hope I'm a man, and I generally think of men more when I think of Hollywood Physiques because that's more like, how can I have biceps like that? But for a woman, this might be totally different. You might be thinking like, oh, the Hollywood physique that I admire is like Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow or Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Come to think of it, I really can only think of superheroes. Whatever it is that you think of when you think Hollywood physiques, chances are it's someone's body that you aspire to. You think, wow, that's impressive. You've seen the magazine covers, get ripped like Ryan in Barbie. So is it attainable? More importantly, is it healthy? And maybe even more importantly, is it sustainable? Can you keep doing it? I absolutely think it's great to have big, lofty goals. I want to have big, lofty goals. I'm all about that saying, it's like shoot for the moon. If you fall short, you'll still land in the stars. I think that's great. But before we decide if Hollywood physiques are healthy or if they're attainable, sustainable, let's pull back the curtain a little bit and see what's really going on that's contributing to those physiques that may help answer our question. So, one, it's their job. It's their livelihood. They're getting paid a lot of money, and it's the predominant thing that they have to focus on. Imagine if you didn't have your 9 to 5 and you could just focus on getting in great shape and like sword fighting for a role and that was your work. Obviously, that's a huge advantage. Number two, they have personal chefs. They have people preparing their food for them. Think of, in your case, if you never had to cook a meal or think about what you had to put into a meal. You didn't have to count the macros like I was talking about. You told them what you needed to do for a day and they just packaged it all for you. In a lot of cases, all these celebs have to do is like open the box, dinner or fourth meal, whatever it is, and eat it. Don't bring anything else into the house. Just eat what's there and you kind of are probably hitting your goal. Number three, they have trainers that are usually hired by the studio for the sole purpose of getting them in great shape for that role. So their training is all going to revolve around and dictate, do they need to look big and muscly or do they have to look lean and ripped or whatever it is? They have people literally coaching them whose job is to monitor their progress. That's a huge advantage, especially if it's that good of a coach that the Hollywood agent is going to be like, or a studio is going to be like, wow, this is the person we need to make, I don't know, so and so look like Superman. And sometimes I've heard that the psychology of the trainer to try to get the actor to kind of conform to the plan the way they want is just as important as the actual training, which is also really interesting. Fourth, sometimes there's a stress that comes with having to look a certain way, and it can result in eating disorders. This is something that Hollywood people deal with all the time, public people deal with. If you don't hit your fitness goal, you may have a group of people around you to rally you and pick you up. If they don't hit their fitness goals and they film something, they may end up in a position where they're on a movie poster and people are like, wow, they don't really look that good, not impressed. That could mess with someone's mental health. So and so didn't get in good enough shape to play Aladdin. Was Aladdin buff? Al? Five. There's a hot one. They sometimes use drugs to enhance their physiques. So we know about fat loss drugs like Ozempic and Manjaro today. Manjaro. We know about these drugs that predominantly women use, but men too, absolutely, to get lean for a role. In some cases, there's this thing like Ozempic face now where people look gaunt and not so good. People use drugs to get in shape, especially when you have the pressures of Hollywood. Steroids. We see a lot of men today. We hear a lot about Hollywood and steroids, using either anabolic steroids or TRT, which is basically like if you're using it at a unreasonable dose or you don't need it, it's basically like you're taking steroids, you're taking testosterone. TRT is testosterone replacement therapy. If you don't need the replacement, you're just taking steroids. We're definitely going to talk more about TRT in the future on another episode. It's a really important topic right now because it's being normalized and it should not be a normal thing. So again, this thing we want to consider is, what is someone willing to do or sacrifice to get in that kind of shape? If it's drugs, if it's whether they be fat loss drugs or steroids and things like that, which I do not recommend you take, and there can be serious long-term health issues associated, you may really want to consider that before you aspire to look like that. And if you do decide to take that stuff, which I certainly hope you don't, realize there may be serious long-term consequences to it. Number 6, I think that's 6. It is just for that day of filming. Meaning, what you see on screen, everything has been orchestrated just for that day of filming. They may not have looked like that 2 weeks before. They may not look like that 2 weeks after. They're going to know where that shirtless scene is, and that's where they may cut carbs or water or salt before. They're going to be lifting weights and getting really pumped up right before. It's going to be everything for that one moment in time in between action and cut. That is not what they're always going to look like. They may also be using diuretics to cut water, which again, not always a great idea, can be very dangerous. Now, this is another really interesting thing today about Hollywood Physiques. We're talking about how we can enhance them in reality, all these different ways, from training, eating, whatever, to lighting and cutting water. But nowadays, they can even be enhanced with the computer, with CGI. They're using CGI to make actors look bigger, buffer, thinner, leaner, more like Superman or whoever it is. Computers are actually making you think sometimes an actor looks in a way that they do not. So whatever, it's not often real. Like, for example, Jason Momoa's muscles. Are they real? They're probably real. It's his hair that concerns me. Is that real? It better not be real. I'm so jealous. It's just so thick and lustrous. Like, how did he get hair like that? So at the end of the day, do I think Hollywood Physiques are healthy to aspire to? Yes and no. If you see something out there in Hollywood that inspires you, that motivates you, that makes you want to take better care of yourself, eat better, train more, all that good stuff, I love it. I think that's a great thing. I think where it gets dangerous and it's not healthy is when it's not just something you're aspiring to and you're not looking at it for what it is, a little snapshot in time. You're making it a standard. And it shouldn't in your mind be the standard because, for one thing, it's their job. And for another thing, in many cases, it's not even real. It's not even what they look like when the cameras aren't rolling. So what do you think of what's going on in Hollywood with physiques and how they're portrayed to us? And frankly, who do you think is the most impressive? I'd love to hear that. That's a good question.